Okay, welcome back, Bio. We are continuing on with photosynthesis today, and the title of this section is Photosynthesis and Overview. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get a definition of photosynthesis. And that definition is the key cellular process identified with energy production is known as photosynthesis. And photosynthesis, sorry, that's a tongue twister, is a process in which green plants use the energy of sunlight to convert water and carbon dioxide into high-energy carbohydrates and oxygen. So over the next couple days, we're going to break that down even more and find out exactly what that means. So just for now, know what the definition of photosynthesis is. It's just a process that plants use to convert the energy of sunlight, or that use the energy of sunlight to convert water and carbon dioxide to high-energy carbohydrates and oxygen. But before we get into that, we're going to look at some of the people that kind of helped us figure out what photosynthesis is. So we're going to look at three people. Their last names are von Helmont, Priestley, and Ingenhousz is how I'm going to say that last name. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but Ingenhousz is what we're going to go with. So to start off, we're going to look at the fact that research into photosynthesis began centuries ago. So the first guy we're going to look at is von Helmont, and we can see his experiment started in the 1600s. And this guy wanted to find out if plants grew by taking material out of the soil. So we all know that plants grow in the ground, and so his natural assumption is that that's where they got all their mass from, was just taking materials out of the soil. So before he started his experiment, he took the mass of a pot of dry soil and a small seedling, then planted the seedling in the pot and watered it regularly. So to take the mass of something, what that pretty much just means is that he weighed it. So he weighed how much a pot of dry soil and a small seedling, he just found the weight of what those two were put together. So and then after he planted it, he watered it regularly, just like we would do with a plant. And after 5 years, the seedling was a small tree and had gained 75 kilograms, but the soil's mass was almost unchanged. So after 5 years, the seedling, which originally doesn't give what its original mass was, but it definitely was nowhere near 75 kilograms. So over that time, it had gained 75 kilograms, but the soil's mass was unchanged. So that's pretty big. So he just showed that pretty much the soil, it wasn't taking things from the soil, it was getting its energy, or adding its mass from somewhere else. So he concluded that the gain in mass came from water because water was the only thing that he added. So that, again, it's a big discovery there that it isn't just pulling things from the ground and like taking things from the ground and adding it to itself. It was the water. So his experiment accounts for the hydrate, or the water portion of carbohydrate produced by photosynthesis. But then we're going to figure out what's the other part. Where did that come from? And we're going to have to probably figure out or look at some different scientists, because although van Helmont did not realize it, carbon dioxide in the air made a major contribution to the mass of his tree. In photosynthesis, the carbon dioxide is used to make sugars and other carbohydrates. Van Helmont, he didn't know this already, he only had part of the story, but he made a major contribution to science, showing that the water was the reason for the tree gaining its mass, not the soil. And so another just little side note here is that we did not know plants take in carbon dioxide, so that's why they are important to us. So carbon dioxide is used to make sugars and other carbohydrates. We'll get to that in a second. So moving on to our next scientist, it's a guy by the last name of Priestley. Priestley's experiment, so we're going to look at his experiment. More than 100 years after von Helmont's experiment, Joseph Priestley provided another insight to the process of photosynthesis. And how he did this was he took a candle, placed a glass jar over it, and watched as the flame gradually died out. So the removal of, just of the air from the candle made the flame gradually die out. And he reasoned that the flame needed something in the air to keep burning, and when it was used up, the flame went out. And that substance was oxygen. So another fun fact, if you don't know this, that in order for something to burn, oxygen is required. And so this is what he was observing right now. Again, he might not have known it at the time, but that's what he observed. So what he did after he saw that the flame went out, he placed a live sprig of mint, which is a plant. If you did not know that, mint came from plant, or mint is a plant, so under the jar, and allowed a few days to pass. And he found that the candle could be relighted and would remain lighted for a while. And the mint plant had produced the substance required for burning, In other words, it had released oxygen. So Priestley showed that plants release oxygen. And that is the reason why we are able to survive, why we need plants, because they provide us with the oxygen that we breathe. So basically, to sum up his experiment right here, he had a candle, placed a jar over it, the candle went out. He then placed a live sprig of mint underneath of the jar with the lit candle, and the candle would would be relighted and would remain lighted for a long time. So that is another big contribution made, again, almost probably 300 years ago that they figured this out. And then our last scientist, Jan Ingenhousz, is how I'm going to say his name, or Ingenhousz. He showed that the effect observed by Priestley occurred only when the plant was exposed to light. So he showed that the only way a plant could produce oxygen was if it was exposed to light. And the results of both Priestley and Ingenhousz's experiments showed that light is necessary for plants to produce oxygen. And to wrap this section up, the experiments performed by von Helmont, Priestley, and Ingenhousz led to work by other scientists who finally discovered that, in the presence of light, plants transform carbon dioxide and water into carbohydrates, and they also release oxygen. So this is our basis for photosynthesis, which we'll get in tomorrow. So let me know if you have any questions.